So just wanted to touch on to this load reduction. We've been having it for a full year where we are. Funny enough, the schedule that we have, I'll probably stick it on the screen right now, um, has been running for a solid year, but it was typed up in 2021. So the schedule we have has been running for a solid year. Never missed a beat. I think there was only one day where they didn't take the power. Load reduction. So in a few minutes, we're going to watch an interview where the spokeslady or the spokesperson from Eskom is going to tell us what load reduction is. Hopefully, we can come out of that a bit more educated to say what's load reduction. But for now, I wanted to share with you guys the screen over here. So what we're looking at now is the areas where load reduction is implemented in Gauteng. So from block I all the way to block J. So when you look at these areas like this, it's easy to read Duduza, Protea Clan outlying, Protea Clan South outlying. Sounds easy to read. But I think when these things are put into a perspective of a map, that's when we really get to see them. These are the areas where load shedding is implemented in the Eastern Cape. I think it's Block B and Block A. It's a lot in the Eastern Cape. Western Cape, not so bad. 10 sites. Philippi East, Crossroads, Klipfontein, Fuleni, Esterrefield, Silver Sands. When they say part of airport industrial, I think maybe that's Nyanga, Kailicha, Mandela Park. Those who know what they were referring to by saying part of airport industrial, hey, let us know in the comments what that might mean. But in my mind, the only place that's nearest to the airport is Nyanga. Moving on, we have Mpumalanga with these 3 columns. I think that's it from Mpumalanga. Yeah, these are the places where they get load reduction. And Northwest, these are the areas where there's load reduction. Northern Cape, there's 3 areas in Northern Cape. Limpopo, you've got these areas here. And Free State, they got 3 areas. I think with 3 areas, Eskom can just knock these out, you know what I mean? So that in Free State, there's nothing. In Northern Cape, there's nothing. So they get a clean bill of health. Same goes for Northwest and Western Cape, since they have only 10. I think it would be feasible for them to just knock them out and make sure that no one there is illegally connected. It's only 3 areas, so that the province, everybody's paying in that province and they don't have to go for load reduction. KZN, these are the areas that are affected by load reduction. So when you look at this thing like this, it doesn't really hit home to say, what are you really looking at? So I prepared a map over here of what load reduction looks like on our South African map. It's almost like, 40% the population? Because over here, there's not a lot of people living over here, I guess, in the middle. Stand to be corrected. I'm sorry if you're living anywhere in the middle where I'm pointing Upton, Kakamas and Kimberley and whatnot. I apologize. But you know what I mean? You guys, you're not affected that much with load reduction. So the map is highly concentrated in the Northwest, Limpopo, Mpumalanga, KZN, Eastern Cape, and the tiny little problematic areas in the Western Cape. Let's look at the Western Cape a little bit. Almost feel like a weather forecast guy. There's this one over here, not so far from Orbs. You got Nyanga. What's this one? Crossroads. Zoom in a bit more to see the names. Still part of Nyanga, I guess. Philippi East. Bit of Philippi. Mitch's Plain, Clean Bill of Health. Kylie Cha. Mandela Park. Mfuleni, Esterfield. And this place over here. Yeah, Silver Sands. I think if Eskom can focus on 1, 2, 3, 4, I think there's 10 of them here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, there's 10 of them. If we can just focus on these 10, then Western Cape doesn't have any areas that are illegally connected, which would be good. It's good for Eskom. It's good for the country. But then after they do that, they have to, go for all the outlying places where they have a few ones, Ipai, you know what I mean? Newton Park. They just deal with these two, and they work their way up doing the smaller sites, you know what I mean? Do the sites where they're far and in between, as they zero in on the highly concentrated ones, which will be more challenging. You know what I mean? When you look at the map, you'd say that here, they just need to do this one. And when they carry on this side by Zeerast and Rustenburg, start tackling those, go to the northwest, tackle some, Limpopo, some of them, you know what I mean, in Leboahome and stuff like that, tackle some of them here. And just come in and, go from the outlying areas and come back, And when it comes down to Soweto, it's not such a big challenge. The minute they get Zirbekom done, they can do Protea Glen, they can do, I think this is a Protea City. You know what I mean? They can do this area over here. But when you look at it from a map perspective, that list is what? Say 40%, to be generous? 50%? Let's say 40% of the country that Eskom needs to deal with. So before we get into this video, if they're implementing load reduction for 5 hours at any given time of the week in these areas that I showed in this map, that means that they're saving in a way, because that's why they were able to do 220 consecutive days without load shedding in the other areas that are not in this map. So meaning to say, people that are not anywhere near these dots or these points that I made on this map, they enjoyed a year of no interruption when it comes to power. But at a cost. At a cost to consumers that are paying. At a cost to businesses that are in these areas. At a cost to lives. Because in some of these areas, where when you have load reduction being implemented, for instance, if you look at Protea Glen, there's a mall here right across us. So they lose on income, they lose on money. In other places, there's shopping centers. When you implement load reduction for us, you are also hitting the clinic that is here. I think there's a clinic somewhere here, if I'm not mistaken, no? Or is it further back? No, it's on the same street. There's a clinic here. So when you implement load shedding, you hit that too. So places like Jabulani, when you do load shedding for Jabulani, you hit the Jabulani Technical High School, you are hitting the mall, you are hitting the hospital, you are hitting the clinic, you are hitting the police station, you are hitting the fire station. And you know, there are some political parties that are fighting to say hospitals, schools, police stations, and fire stations should not have load reduction or load shedding. They should have power at all times. And Eskom, if they're going to not be able to do that, they must give them other things like solar energy, backup generators, diesel, and so forth to make sure that they have uninterrupted power. You know what I mean? So when you look at Klipspruit, stone throw away from Mapunya Mall, this affects business, it affects commerce. We are crying about unemployment. Young people are told to go into the digital economy, learn about computers, learn about IT, AI, learn about coding, robotics, machine learning, all the buzzwords, learn about domains, web development, app development. You can't do none of that when there's no electricity. So even if they had a side hustle going, or they had a sewing business, or they had whatever going for them, the minute you take away the means to production, you take away the electricity, what do you want them to do? They're going to sit. Unemployment goes. Crime escalates because now dormant hands are the devil's playground. But before this gets too preachy, let's get into that video so you can hear what the Eskom lady has to say. Let me just rewind it a bit. Here we go.
As the cold grips the country, Eskom says it's resumed load reduction in 7 provinces. Although the power utility claims this is not rolling blackouts, it says there's been no load shedding for over 100 consecutive days due to what it says is sufficient generation capacity. Eskom warns that network overloading has resurfaced with the onset of winter. It claims it has no option but to implement load reduction to protect its assets from repeated failures and explosions, which pose a risk to human life as well. Affected Eskom supply areas include Limpopo, Western Cape, Eastern Cape, Gauteng, Mpumalanga, KwaZulu-Natal, as well as the Northwest. About 94% of the total overloaded transformers are in these areas due to electricity theft and what is said to be indiscriminate use of electricity. It says transformers damaged by overloading can leave an area without power for up to 6 months. In the areas where load reduction has been implemented in the past, Eskom says it has seen a significant drop in equipment failure and prolonged outages. All right, now
Before they get into that, we had an issue with local Eskom guys collaborating with councillors to purposefully vandalize Eskom equipment so that they can get kickbacks from the communities to fix that Eskom equipment that they vandalized during the winter of 2024 and 2023. So just keep a pin in that to say that it's not only overloading or illegal connections, it's also corrupt Eskom officials working with corrupt municipal officers to get an extra 13th check out of the community.
Joining us to discuss this further is Eskom spokesperson Daphne Mokoena. Ms. Mokoena, good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us on The Full View. Can we start with again making the distinction between load reduction and load shedding? Because there are still those who hold the view that if both load reduction and load shedding leave them without electricity, then it's the same thing.
Good afternoon, Fundo, and good afternoon to your viewers. Load reduction and load shedding are two different processes that we implement.
So, everybody at home, get your pens out. This is the explanation to say that what is the difference between load shedding and load reduction.
So if I may start with load reduction, which is a process that has been long established. It's not the first time that we are implementing load reduction. We normally.
And she said that like it's a good thing. They're proud. Something that's not starting today. It's something they've been implementing from what, 2017? No, 2007, 2008. I can't even remember when load shedding started. But it all started with Thabo Mbeki when he had that energy report and they told him that it's coming. And he said this is not going to be the problem of the ANC because in his head, they were going to sell off Eskom.
We don't implement it when we implement load shedding. That's one. But what it is basically a process that we implemented or we started implementing some time back. But we implementing it, and when we implement it, normally we would have enough available capacity like we're having today. For an example, we have about 32,000 megawatts of generation capacity. But when we implement load reduction, we are implementing it because our network or isolated specific networks are overloading. And what overloading means is that customers that are connected to that particular network are basically consuming electricity that is more than what that particular network is designed to cater for. And this is because we basically design our networks to cater for what the customers would have applied, but we would also add some contingency for customers that would want to upgrade. But in this case, you have those networks where customers are consuming electricity indiscriminately, and because the reasons are that most of these customers would have bypassed their meters, so they are not buying like you and me for the services that they are using. Hence, they are using electricity indiscriminately, especially when it's so cold like yesterday and today. And then we've got the infrastructure like your transformers integrity being at risk, where we have seen transformers now popping all over the show where obviously we're experiencing this particular overloading. So we will then.
So, load reduction, according to her, happens when we overload the system and it's non-paying clients and the transformers pop all over the place, right? So you see a high demand of usage during winter. But then we were given a schedule for load reduction for the entire year, all the seasons. Right now, if it wasn't for me recording this video, I'll be walking around without a t-shirt on because that's how hot it is. But we get load reduction. So is it a case that they are doing load reduction because the networks are consuming too much? In the summer, what are we consuming? No one is switching on their heaters. In the areas we have, nobody's got pool pumps running. We're just switching on our fridges, maybe the odd fan. That's it. Nobody wants to cook hot food in the summer. They'll do cold dishes and stuff like that. So that excuse of saying that load reduction is because of overloading in the winter, it can only somewhat fly in the winter. But in summer, what she just said doesn't work. And this video, for those of you watching it now, was recorded now in December of 2024. I'm late to the party. This interview took place on SABC 4 months ago. But then, sometimes you got to wait and see to say what makes sense, give them a chance and see what they're going to do. And we gave them a chance. We gave them a whole year to sort their story out. So for me, that explanation of load reduction happening because we are overusing in the winter makes sense only in winter. Now it's summer. Nobody's overusing anything, especially households. Maybe captains of industry, malls, places where they do manufacturing, it's business as usual. But households, the demand has dropped. So this, I don't understand.
And implement what we call load reduction to basically switch off that network, that particular network, to avoid these transformers from popping or from exploding, or to basically protect our infrastructure. And also,
pardon me for interjecting there. So
yes,
essentially,
yes.
you're saying these are illegal connections that you're dealing
in
with
most
in most cases.
in most areas where we have audited these areas, it is due to illegal connections.
So if you then implement load reduction, it would be for those who connected illegally, but also for those who have legal connections.
And unfortunately, because we've got customers that are paying embedded within, these networks, unfortunately, then the paying customers get affected by this. So,
in other words, Eskom does not have the capacity to do a door-to-door campaign to root out non-paying clients. That's a fruit salad that she gave us, but I'll give you the sweet and short of it. Eskom does not have the capacity to do a door-to-door and switch off illegal clients. And in some cases where they do go on campaigns, they do get resistance, they do get communities fighting back against them. But hey, you've got the South African Police Service and you've got the army. You've got instruments of government that you can work with to make sure that everybody complies with the law, because we cannot be living in a lawless country. But yet, here we go. She's saying that if you are in any of these areas, or rather, let me just go back to this screen and just go out of full screen. If you're in any of these areas and you're an Eskom paying client, your meter is up to date, you're on Karen 2 or whatever they call it, that Keyring 2 or that new updated meter thing, you've never bypassed the meter, also called Bridger, you are a loyal paying Eskom client, tough titties, man. You're in a bad area. You should move. You should move to a better area. An area with less people that are doing bad things with Eskom infrastructure. You staying in Soweto? There you go. The Eskom lady told you. Move out from this area. Go find yourself a nice place, maybe Joburg CBD, where they hijack entire buildings. Or, stay in Sandton somewhere. Rosebank, Parktown. Take your pick, man. Four Ways. Where's this? Midrand. You know what I mean? Just come up here. Centurion. Just find a place where people pay for their services and go live there. And that's how you'll escape load reduction if you're in these areas. Just find someone you can sell your house to who's it doesn't know the status quo of what's happening. Sounds mean, but hey, you gotta get out of this rock. The lady just told you. Unfortunately, because you're in these areas, you're going to experience load reduction. Yes. Let's give you a chance to carry on.
These illegal customers or customers that have illegally connected or having bypassed their meters. So in actual fact, now affecting everyone in that particular area.
Our plans are afoot perhaps to have some sort of a comprehensive plan to deal with these illegal connections then? Because, a number of citizens would feel hard done by if they have legal connections, they're paying for their electricity, but now they'll be affected by perhaps informal settlements behind their own residences.
You see, this female reporter for the SAPC is a dime a dozen. Normally, when Eskom comes on, they give them softball questions. She's trying to kind of ask them to say, do you got a plan? It's good to have a plan. But I think that question, she's asking the wrong state-owned entity to say if they have a plan to stop illegal connections. Because this illegal connection things, if you really look at it, it started from 94. It started with a mentality that was embedded by the political elite of that time. So I don't want to touch on politics much, you know what I mean? Let's stick with electricity. But if you do your own research, you just go back to the political campaigns during 94, 98, and see what the political parties were promising the people. Free education, free house, free this, free that. Then you might get to see maybe where the problem of the culture of non-paying comes from. Because it's a culture thing. It's a mentality thing. You know what I mean? If from day one everybody was on the same page to say you pay for your water, you pay for electricity, you pay for your trash to be removed, you don't litter where you stay, and this and this and that, just maybe you'd have lesser and fewer defaulters. And if the law was more strict on people that default and do weird things to infrastructure that belongs to the government, maybe people wouldn't trust their luck. But now, it's a lawless country, man. It's a lawless country. You know what I'm saying? Got people role playing as Pablo Escobar, hiding money underneath sofas.
Yeah, look, it's not just with the informal settlements, by the way, Mfundo. We've got customers, I'm sure you'd have seen in some areas where we've got backyard dwellers, we would have designed for one house and you've got 15 houses behind or somebody's house, meaning that those 15 households that are...
I don't think you can fit 15 houses in Soweto in our yards. Maybe on farm plots, maybe, but in Soweto, maybe 8 rooms. If you do a double story, maybe 10 if they're shacks. But if you're gonna build actual brick and mortar structures like rooms, maybe 8 if you do a double story. But then that way, the Eskom vehicles, when they pass by, they'll see an actual building and then they can come in and say, you know, are these registered? Do they have meters? So the whole thing of saying 20, 30 people, that's now informal settlements where it's just shacks. But then I think later on in this interview, she talks about that.
Backyard dwellers are also linked to or connected to our network and consuming electricity. And those 15 are 15 that we do not know about and we did not even design our networks for. So for illegal connections, yes, you would have seen, I think, informal settlement.
And when she talks about, you know, designing networks, maybe we should talk about, in another video, we should talk about the town planning for Johannesburg. We've been running on old infrastructure for the longest. Soweto, very few, you know, when you talk about new infrastructure, new places, it's your Proteat lands, your Vleehoffs and whatnot and what, but then the old Soweto, Moletsane, Tladi, Mapetla, Chabavu, you name it, all the way to Diepkloof, Naturena. That's running on infrastructure that the government of the day found after 1994. I'm sorry for that sound. That's me. That's not your PC. That's my PC. So planning, it was on them. They had enough time to plan to say that in townships, there's going to be industries, there's going to be factories, there's going to be this, there's going to be this, there's going to be that. When you look at immigration and illegal immigration, when you look where all the illegal foreigners tend to settle when they come to South Africa, or the foreigners, they either are in the CBD or they are in Alex, or they are in places where they are close to economic opportunities, Or when they come to Soweto, they're in the back rooms, some of them are running spaza shops and stuff like that. Of course, there's going to be added demand for electricity. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out to say that we need to, whatever that was put in place or planned for Soweto or rural areas or townships, we need to double that because, hey, we are building houses. They are building with Calco M3 flats. They're building all these infrastructure. They're building malls. It's going to need energy. You can't keep building and adding people to the grid that you found there from the previous government. You got to build and add more resources, add more capacity to the grid so that when people grow, when you don't have electricity for years on end, when you get electricity, you'll be shy in using it. You won't have a lot of appliances. Maybe your first appliance will be a kettle. Then you'll follow up with a 2-plate stove. Then you'll buy yourself a fridge. Then you'll say, now let me buy a stove with an oven. Then you say, let me buy myself a TV. Let me buy myself a radio. Let me buy myself an air conditioner. Because you are getting accustomed to using it. The more you get accustomed to it, the more you are going to use the electricity. So when you bring new people onto the grid that are coming from a historical background where they didn't have access to electricity, they're going to gradually get used to it and they are going to outgrow whatever you planned for them. So if you say that one household is supposed to spend 1,500 rands, be sure that that same household in the next 5 years, they're going to be spending 2,000 rands on electricity because the demand will grow. The little kid that was there is growing up. They'll have their own computer, their own tablet. They'll have their own 3D printer. Electricity, electricity, electricity. So as a country, we need to grow. And the whole idea of Eskom getting to net zero emissions, whoever told them that, the consultant that told them that they'll get to net zero emissions, I think it's this one over here. Yeah, they were saying it here. Striving for net zero emissions by 2050. Sasol has never reached zero emissions, and they got more money than Eskom. Okay? Blade in Zamanzi told them to say that if you don't use coal as a base load, you're not going to be able to sustain the network. And they said, he's working for the coal guys. He's destroying the ecosystem. He's destroying that and that. What they forget to tell you is to say that America, Europe, China, they ran on coal to get themselves to be first world countries. Now that they're first world countries, they are now telling everybody to say, from third world countries like us in Africa, don't use coal to industrialize your country. Use renewable energies. The same renewable energies that Germany had to stop. They had a full-on program where they were using wind turbines, hydroelectricity, and you name it. They were green.
Despite the fact that Germany is an EU power broker, they are moving backwards as a result of a reckless green agenda. And in a stunning move of woke hypocrisy, which is kind of the default position of the wokester anyway, the German Vice-Chancellor, who is the co-leader of the Green Party, has announced Germany will increase its use of coal power in order to wean itself off Russian gas.
They couldn't make it past the winter. They had to get gas from Russia. Well, that's until Biden blew up the Nord Stream, you know what I mean?
If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. Then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
Then they had to get gas because they knew to say base coal. There's videos that are circulating on social media with trucks lining up, exporting coal from South Africa to go to Europe. And then those same guys and Americans, they say to our dear president, here's 80 million or whatever million, tell your people not to use coal. Oh, by the way, keep exporting coal to us. Your base load needs to be coal. Renewable energy, the battery storage for renewable energy has not reached the technological stage where it can be reliable to be added to the grid. Don't take my word for it. There's professionals that came on to SABC that had interviews about that. If I do find it by the time I'm done editing this video, I'll link it below. So, onto the video, almost there.
What we have done now, that is why you'd see that most of the informal settlements, as long as the area, they are not in an area that is not illegal, if they are not illegally obviously settled in that area, we will.
Listen properly.
I think informal settlements, what we have done now, that is why you'd see that most of the informal settlements, as long as the area, they are not in an area that is not illegal, if they are not illegally obviously settled in that area.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
We would electrify those customers with obviously the working with the relevant municipalities.
So the backyard dwellers will be quite problematic then, or difficult for you to deal with. So is there some sort of a plan to eventually deal with this? Because one assumes the impact of load reduction on businesses is clearly the same and negative just as load shedding itself. So one would think if the impact on business prompted you to deal decisively with load shedding, then you would want to also deal with load reduction.
Yes, definitely. And I think we're coming from a long way with load reduction, or not load reduction, yes, in terms of also converting some areas for customers actually to do the right thing. And I think we've got areas like your Glen Austin, and I'm citing your Glen Austin. We've got Deep Blue, I think extension 2, if I'm not mistaken. We've got Protea North customers, some extensions where we have actually excluded customers from load reduction because we worked with those customers. They actually came forward and to say that they are doing these illegal activities and they want to do right with Eskom. And
So she's saying that you need to self-report. When you self-report, you face a 6,000 Rand fine. It can be broken up into various months of payment, but during that time you run the risk of not having electricity. Also, that is very heavily reliant on the fact that the person who goes to self-report has the financial means to raise the money to pay for that fine so that they can be again in the good books of the Lord Eskom.
Asazi ukuthi kwenzakalani kumanje thina besazi ukuthi mhlawumbe la ka Eskom bazosiza bangene housewares njengoba bebenza kuqala kodwa manje njengoba bezosihlanganisa ngamakhanda kanje ekugcineni bazokhatha la fanele size futhi i-deadline nini Sunday.
Worked with them. We've normalized their networks, and today I can tell you that those customers, even when we implement load reduction, they won't be affected.
So are you basically pinning your hopes on awareness campaigns that if you go down to the citizens and you explain the impact that load reduction will have on them, the businesses in the area, that perhaps they'll do the right thing?
Yeah, so we really, and this is hence we have all these call to action, and you have now realized that we've got a campaign called Save Your Transformer, Save Lives, where we are.
Guys, government employees are out of touch with reality. They need to touch grass. For 100 rands here in Gauteng, you get 34, 35 units, I'm not really sure, around about there. To keep the house going, you need, like the minister said, 1,200 rands. We are sitting on record high unemployment. We're sitting on record high inflation. It was Black Friday a few days ago. No one was buying nothing. Nobody has money. And you are out here saying that people must do the right thing and pulling on heartstrings. Even if they wanted to do the right thing, there is no money for them to do the right thing. And I'm not excusing this, but I'm saying maybe Eskom should look at a different model. Maybe look at flat rates for certain areas, look at meter rates for certain areas, and so forth. Diversify how you collect on this money. Because if you think that households that are headed up by pensioners, and the pensioners are the only breadwinners, where they get something like 1.5 or 2,000 rands from SASSA, will take 1,200 rands to pay electricity. They'll be left with nothing to eat. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. Yes, you know what I mean? We need to do things in a proper way. We need to pay for services as South Africans so that we can keep up Eskom. Eskom belongs to us as a country. We need to make sure that we pay for using electricity. But sometimes these rates that they give us for electricity, even for working class people, middle class people, they're not finding it easy to pay that electricity. If middle class families are struggling with paying for electricity, I don't know about families that are reliant on social welfare.
Are actually trying to talk to the hearts of our customers, those that are not, obviously, that have bypassed their meters or that have illegally connected, to do the right thing. And we know that, I mean, we have worked with the municipalities in as far as what the remedial fines that we normally charge for these customers, where we even had to actually agree with these customers to pay their fines, in tranches. So those initiatives have actually, in some areas, we have seen some gains, but unfortunately, in other areas, we're still stuck with the same behavior.
So those areas are areas between LSM level 6, 7, and 8. If you look at Deep Kloof, their living standard measure, and you look at Protea North, you are looking at people where they long time finished off paying their houses, or the houses, they're on the third generation wealth, you know what I mean? They're not starting off with the bond. Some people in Protea Glen, they're first generation and they only finished their bond now. Some second generation, they got the house, but they're unemployed. So when she says that some areas they are working with them and not, it's also a financial thing. You need to look at the areas you are going into. Are they in a financial position to do it? Do they have the jobs? It also goes back to the government. Are they making the environment feasible for people for SMMEs to hire more people and businesses to thrive? If the environment is not good for businesses, it's going to have a ripple effect.
Of course, you'd want to trust that humans will do the right thing, but for those who might know of perhaps neighbors who are not doing the right thing and have these backyard dwellers that you haven't accounted for, if they wanted to give you a tip-off or perhaps be whistleblowers, is there a specific number they should call?
Yes, we've got an Eskom crime line, which is 0800112722, or they can actually WhatsApp us on the number 081-333-3323. So that once we get those reports, then we can action them. So that, and this is one way, Mfundo, of also working collaboratively with the rest of the customers out there, so that all of us can enjoy electricity, especially now that load shedding, has been suspended.
And especially because it's quite cold. Definitely.
It's quite cold as well. Yes.
Thank you very much.
So I think there it is. We walked away from this interview not really getting the difference between load shedding, load reduction, because at the end of the day, paying clients are in the dark. When it's load shedding, I'm in the dark. When it's load reduction, I'm in the dark. Either way, I'm in the dark. So Eskom really needs to see how they can improve this situation when it comes down to the whole load reduction situation and collateral damage, reducing it. We have technology. They can go door to door. They can hire young people to do the surveys. You know what I mean? Just reduce the number of people that have to suffer, man. Because I'm sure in this sea of people that are experiencing load reduction, in this sea over here, I am sure that there are paying clients, that there are businesses that are paying. So Eskom needs to find systems to do this better. So on that note, I think I'll just leave it there. I would like to hear your thoughts about this video, what I said. Just leave it in the comments. You know, didn't mean to offend anybody with this one. I'm just putting it out there to say that load reduction sucks. I've experienced it for a whole year, 5 hours at a time. Have to work crunch to make sure that I get my work out. But then I can only imagine people in the retail sector, entertainment sector, in the hospitality sector, people who are working in hospitals and so forth, what they go through when it's load reduction. So let's get it right. 2025 is the year we end all these problems, you know what I mean?